of this country. Now my question would be, what are your expectations of this?
By saying, first of all, that democracy rests on foundations that need to be established over time. And that is about strong institutions, it is about responsible and accountable government, it's about free press, it's about human rights and equal rights to all people. And if you have those elements, strong institutions, responsible, accountable government, then that is a basis on which we believe, as democracies, you stand to prosper and develop a truly open and successful society. Second point to say is that no democracy is perfect, and that goes for the UK as it does for Zambia. It all comes to as I say, the foundations of time that you need to establish and to build up those institutions and the accountability. And of course, you know, the UK itself has a complicated history in Zambia. So what I go on to say this evening, I don't say in any degree of relationship that is anything other than two democracies standing side by side. In terms of the elections themselves coming up, what we want to see is a credible and a peaceful process where votes are counted freely and everyone has the chance to express themselves, both during the campaign and then, importantly as well, on polling day. And in terms of the UK commitment, we, as I say, have been a strong supporter of Zambian democracy over many years, many decades, and this year will be no different. Just last week, I announced a package of 16 million kwacha support for the strengthening democracy in Zambia. It's precisely about supporting those areas where I said at the start, in terms of, you know, a free media, equitable rights for all people, strong institutions. So we're very much a part of that, as indeed the US and other partners are. And then moreover, just to conclude on this point, we're also providing additional support through our funding for local observers, local Zambian observers for the elections, which will be, you know, it's important in any democracy that you have observers, and the UK, like other democracies around the world, welcomes observers from around the world to observe its elections and learn from their recommendations. So that's an area that we're supporting, as well as aspects of civil society, which are also really important voices at any time, but particularly in an election year where civic space is so important, and civil society can have a real role to ensure accountability in that regard.
David, August is approaching. You've seen we're in the campaign mood. We have seen presidential candidate. They started on Tuesday filing in their nominations. And what do you expect, or what is it that the United States of America is expecting to see this year that Zambians are going to the polls, and what is your commitment?
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Kevin. And again, it's great to be with you this evening.
I think this has been a very exciting week because, you know, for the United States, for Zambia, for the United Kingdom, we are democracies that empower the people. Democracy means the people rule. The people get to go to the polls and vote. And this week has been very exciting because we've seen candidates come forward and say, I'm registering to be a candidate to be president of Zambia. That's an awesome thing. I would note that, you know, you look at the two major parties and you look at 4 of the major parties, they've come forward and nominated women to be vice president. How exciting is that? And after Zambia has already had 1 woman vice president, now 4 parties are saying they would offer a woman vice president going forward. Speaking for my country, that only since January has had a woman working in the White House, I think that's a very exciting thing to celebrate for Zambia. I think that for all of us who are committed to democracy, it's very important to recognize that exercising the franchise, the right to vote, is sacred. If we can't exercise the right to vote, this franchise, freely and have it freely counted, there's something wrong with us. And so I think the high ideals that the United States and Zambia, the United Kingdom, strive for is to make democracy real. What we want to help Zambia, support Zambia and our Zambian friends on is to make this election free and credible and peaceful. We're with you in this. We're partners. You know, my country has been through a very rough year, a very rough few months. Our election was one of the messiest we've had in modern times, but we came through because we have strong institutions and we committed to the freedom of the vote and the free counting of the vote. And ultimately, we had a peaceful, freely counted vote. It was very close, but Joe Biden was elected president, and now he's president of the United States. Kamala Harris is vice president of the United States, and that's because of our commitment to democracy and the vote. That's what we want for Zambia, a freely counted vote, and whoever is elected, the people will rule, and the person will become president, continue as president, become a new president. It depends what the people choose. And I think we want to see that process be peaceful, and that's a very important hope that all of us as partners hope for this beautiful country that we get to call home for a few years as we serve as diplomats in your country.
Both of you, Nick and David, you've spoken about free and fair elections. That is what you are hoping to see in this country. You've talked about free of violence also, and I know that you've been in this country for years now, and you've seen how our elections have been marred with specks of violence and others intimidating others. Let me pose this question. So far, with your stay in Zambia, and from the time that we've held by-elections, and now we are in the actual general elections that comes after 5 years, with what you've seen, are you able to say this year we are likely to have free and fair, credible elections, free of violence, or what is it that, with the indicators that are on the ground, what is it that you are anticipating? Anyone of you can take it, either Nick or David.
Well, let me pick up first of all the violence point, because I think that's a really important one. And both David and myself have spoken already about what we see as one of the most important elements that we want to support from the process, and that is a peaceful election, a peaceful vote on the day, a peaceful campaign in the run-up, and a peaceful aftermath. And I think we can be very clear tonight, as we have previously, and will be in the future, that there is no place whatsoever for violence in this campaign. And disagreeing with someone's political affiliation is no reason to threaten them or intimidate them. It is no reason to hound them from their office. It is no reason to destroy their property or their livelihood. It is no reason to burn down their premises. And there have been worrying things that have happened, certainly in my time here. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, ourselves in our positions as representatives of our country, but also, even more importantly, on those stakeholders, those leaders of the political parties, to call out violence, whether it's others or indeed whether it's from within their own party ranks. That they need to be very clear in condemning that, and that it won't be tolerated. And I think if you get that real unison and everyone speaking out against these acts and some of these acts that we've seen, then I think that is certainly one way that you can try to head that off.
David?
Yeah, I think that one of our biggest concerns is that the elections be peaceful. And as I talk to Zambians across this beautiful country, whether they're in government, opposition, civil society, churches, students, whoever, everybody wants this election to be peaceful. They want the campaign to be peaceful. I think we all have to recognize that there's a problem here in the country of cadre violence. I won't tell you that we don't have problems with cadres in the United States. We do. But the problem of cadre violence is really a major concern here, because when people can act in ways to threaten radio stations, threaten people in their offices, intimidate people and have a chilling effect, that undermines the freedom, the free spirit that's necessary for an election, a campaign to be free. I think law enforcement has a really important job to play to basically enforce the law and protect citizens' right to express their opinions freely and peacefully and respectfully. I was very pleased with the actions following the intimidation by a cadre a few weeks ago of a young woman who was in her office at the Ministry of Power and Works.
Works and Supply.
Works and Supply, sorry. And, you know, the police stepped in right after that. I thought that was really important. That's a good example of how law enforcement can play a very important role, and government can signal that that kind of cadre violence is not acceptable. So I would say I find hope in those kind of things. I am concerned, as I have expressed to different people throughout the country, that cadres have threatened radio stations. They've intimidated people. That's not fair, and that's not the best of Zambia's values. That's not the best of all of our values as democracies. So we need to be concerned and cautious and aware and confront cadre violence during these 3 months. I would say His Excellency, you know, the President has spoken out against cadre violence. People in opposition have spoken out against cadre violence. Those are really important statements, and we need and appreciate those efforts to prevent that kind of intimidation from happening in the future.
Nick, you talked about strong institutions. You've talked about leaders that have, you know, condemned violence. Others in this country, Zambians, are saying condemning violence is not enough. It is on record. We had the third Republican president, the late Levi Patrick Mwanawasa. For him, people are saying he wasn't just condemning, but he issued a strong warning, telling cadres, say, if you are found that you're perpetrating violence, you're on your own. No one is going to protect you, whether you're coming from my party, but if a finger points at you to say, this is the one who is perpetrating violence, you are on your own. And indeed, we saw people being arrested, taken to court, and being jailed. People are saying this time around it's no longer there. The president will say, I'm condemning violence. Leaders, those that were in offices, ministers will say, we are condemning violence. The opposition will say, we are condemning violence. But these cadres seem to be untouchable. They are not arrested. They are not taken to prison. What is it that we should do? Should we build more strong institutions? And if we are to take that route, what are these strong institutions that we can build?
Thank you. I mean, reflecting a little bit as well on the question just gone. I mean, first of all, it is very important that everyone does speak out, as I said, and that includes absolutely includes party leaders who have a particular responsibility to the members of their party and the affiliations of their party. And as David said, we have seen party leaders, the president, opposition leaders, do that. And we need to keep seeing that happening. I don't think you can say it enough about the need to avoid violence. And I think what your point is that it should be there needs to be action, not just words. I think action flows from words, and if all of us are absolutely crystal clear in terms of a zero tolerance towards violence, then that in itself will go some way to addressing it. I think what you then need to see is the point that David was making, and you gave one or two examples, where then the institutions, so in this instance, the police, take action to curb violence and to ensure that those who commit it are held accountable to it. And I think as well to give another example, when in December we saw the tragic shooting of two civilians following a peaceful gathering in central Lusaka
on the 23rd
of December of opposition supporters. What was very important to us, to our governments, and to the Zambian people was that someone was held accountable for that. And in that instance, we have seen charges being laid against an individual, and so I think ensuring that, that there is action taken as well on perpetrators of violence is also important. And it's important that that is done, just finally to say, it's important that that is done equitably and evenly. And what you cannot have is a situation where some perpetrators are involved in violent acts and that goes unpunished. Because if you then get, it then fuels further tensions, a perception of uneven-handedness, and so it's really important that action is continued to take in an even-handed way, and of course the Zambian laws and Zambian constitution is applied, so that if you those accused are also allowed the process of justice to be served as well.
David, you are a qualified journalist. I want to ask this question to you. What is the role of the media in a democratic society like ours, Zambia? Others are saying we're a growing democracy, but what could be the role of the media in a country that is growing in terms of democracy like Zambia?
I think that Zambia, like the United States, like the United Kingdom, is a robust democracy with a lot of different views. The media is absolutely essential to free elections, to free campaigning, and to the strength of a democracy. As a former journalist, I would say that the United States of America is strongly committed to freedom of the press. It's absolutely important that media be able to operate freely, without interference, and be able to have candid dialogue. That is absolutely essential to a democracy and the health of a democracy. Kelvin, you as a journalist, tonight you might ask me a good question about a certain subject, and you don't know what I'm going to say, And that's part of what a journalist's job is. You ask me candid questions, and I'm your guest, and you can't control what I'm going to say. But that's the role of the media, to foster debate, to encourage exchange of views. And during a campaign for president, for senior positions in government, you have to have, as a democracy, that lifeblood of democracy, which is the fourth estate, the freedom of the press. I used to be a newspaper reporter and wrote from some tough places. I went to the Philippines and South Korea. I did some tough stories, went to some tough places that were dangerous. But I always asked people good questions and then saw what they had to say. That is so important. And so, Kelvin, for you and the folks here at MUVI TV, I applaud what you do, because it's absolutely critical to the health of Zambian democracy that you and the reporters at ZNBC and other media across the country are able to operate, able to do your jobs, and are supported by the citizenry. I think that is a critical, sacred job that you have to help safeguard Zambia's democracy.
Nick, to you, what is your assessment of Zambia's media landscape currently as the country heads to the poll? I know that you've been in this country and you've been following how the media has been operating in this country. Now that we're in an election year, what is your assessment so far?
Well, first of all, just to absolutely agree with David on the importance, the absolute importance and the centrality of a free press and a free media to any democracy. It is paramount for a democracy to prosper and for the people in it to prosper and an open society. I mean, here in Zambia, there are many news outlets, TV stations such as the one that we're on, radio stations. So on the face of it, it is a widespread landscape. I think the importance is that these outlets are able, and this is part of the core aim, one of the core aims of our program funding, indeed, on elections, is to ensure that all parties have equitable access to media, and that's particularly important during the campaign season that we're now in, so that political parties, whatever their affiliations, members of those parties, voters have the opportunity to hear the debate, to test those potential leaders who've come forward in the last few days to submit their nominations. They want to hear what they have to say. And if it's going to be a healthy democracy, then it's important that those voices are heard and those voices are debated. And that's a central point and a central part of any democracy.
I'll pose the same question to you, Tev. You have told us that you've covered news from different countries when you are still working as a journalist. How do you assess the media in Zambia now that we're in an election year? Is the media free in Zambia? You've been in Zambia for some time now. And with what is happening, and now that we're in the campaign mood, what is your assessment on the media freedom in this country?
Well, first let me say, Kelvin, I think that in a campaign season, in the run-up to a presidential election, that's the most important time that you need a free media. That's when you need it most. That's the chips are on the table. That's the most important time when you need a free media. I would say when you look at the conditions that journalists face here in Zambia, you really, as groups like Freedom House say, you're partly free. You're partly free. There is a robust debate. There's some journalists who do great programs. We've talked about Earth Day. We've talked about health issues before. We've talked a lot about the issues the United States and Zambia work together on. But the most important issues you talk about are democracy issues, are these issues in the campaign, because citizens who are watching tonight are trying to decide, am I going to vote one way or the other? How am I going to vote? And they need to know, and they only learn oftentimes from good journalists asking good questions. And so I think that, when you look at the environment today, some of the harassment that some journalists face is difficult. And I know, and I feel for you, because I know some of my journalistic friends here in Zambia have a tough environment to work in. And so what I want to just say to you, as a former journalist, a current diplomat, and a representative of President Joe Biden, I want to say a free media is critically important. We know it in the United States, and we know it in Zambia.
Nick, the leading contenders in these polls, like I've mentioned this week, we've seen presidential candidates filing in their nomination papers through the Electoral Commission of Zambia. And we have seen political parties picking on females or women to be their running mate. We have seen His Excellency President Edgar Lungu picking on Professor Nkandluo to be his running mate in the August polls, who is female. And we've seen also the leading, the biggest opposition, United Party for National Development, UPND leader Hakainde Hichilema with his alliance partners settling for a woman in the name of Mtalina Lumango, and other, contenders. For example, Steve Nyerenda of NAREP, he has settled for a woman. Also, the DP leader Hari Kalaba has settled for a woman. What does this entail?
What does it entail?
Of these presidential candidate men picking on women to be their running mates?
Well, I think I'd like to answer that question by saying that I'm very pleased that the party leaders have chosen who they feel to be the most capable and effective person to be their running mates, regardless of whether that's a man or a woman. They have chosen who they feel to be is the candidate, the potential vice president who they want to run their campaign alongside, and they've done that on the basis of the qualities and attributes that they see in their running mate. And of course, it is fantastic that that all of them are women. Absolutely, and we should celebrate that fact, but we should celebrate more the fact that they have achieved that, not because they're women, but because all of them have shown to those presidential candidates that they are the best person to run alongside them.
David, I know that you talked about it, that today, your country, US, they've got a female vice president. What sort of excitement, what does this mean to the United States? Looking at countries in Africa, for example, Zambia, it started with Tanzania. The current president now is female, who was a running mate to the late Pombe Magufuli. And now in Zambia, these political parties have settled for female vice presidents or running mates. If they win, then we'll continue to have a female vice, because the one that is in the office will be vacating in August, and she's female. What does this bring to the United States?
Well, I would just say that, as Nick mentioned, I think it's very exciting that dynamic, capable women leaders are stepping forward and moving forward in political and public life in the United States. Previously, your prime minister in Britain, you've had several women prime ministers. You know, you have a current a wonderful woman as vice president. I just want to say a big appreciation to Honorable Weena for her 80 years of amazing service. She has given a lot since freedom fighter days here in this country. And I think Zambia, it dates back a long time to her striving for improving the role of women and girls in Zambia. And I have deep respect and appreciation for the work that she's done over decades to help create opportunities for other women and girls here in Zambia. As you say, Kelvin, 4 major parties, including the 2 most prominent, largest parties, have women vice president candidates. That's exciting. You know, I personally, on a personal level, find Kamala Harris in my country one of the most exciting and dynamic and inspirational political leaders we have. She actually visited your country when she was a young girl, you know, with diplomats in her family. But I think similarly, Zambia has lots of wonderfully capable women, and lots of your viewers tonight, I think probably half are women. And we have amazing examples of women in public life, in business, in civil society, in religious organizations, student leaders who are women, MPs. And I think, you know, as women continue to claim their place in public life, that's a very exciting thing. So, you know, Zambia had a woman vice president before we did in America. So we have some things to learn from you, and we're following in your good footsteps. Oftentimes, people will tell me that Zambia hasn't been a democracy for very long, but you've been a democracy for over 50 years. That's not an instant. And so your democracy has strengths. You've had 2 transitions peacefully of power from one party to another. That's an amazing and wonderful thing. So Zambia has a very precious heritage with its democracy. And, you know, having served as a diplomat in Nigeria, in Sudan, places that have tremendous violence and elections, frankly, in Sudan didn't have democratic elections for decades. Zambia has a very special heritage. And all of your viewers, all the citizens of this country need to recognize this is something sacred. Work for it, struggle for it, protect it, because your democracy is a fundamental birthright of every girl and every boy born in this country.
Before I go to Nick and talk about COVID-19, let me start with you, David. With these indicators, Zambians are saying, oh, wow, now in the near future, Zambia will produce the first female president. What do you think has triggered this? Like you've mentioned, so far we've got 5 political parties that have, you know, picked on female or women as their running mates. What is it that really has triggered this? Because it was unheard of in 2015 when His Excellency President Edgar Lungu picked on Mama Inonge Wina to be his running mate, and we've seen political parties following suit. What do you think would have triggered this, that now political parties could only settle for female and say, this is my running mate?
I think it's just, as Nick said, it's a very exciting recognition that women leaders in public life are very capable, have a lot to offer. I am a big believer, and the Biden administration has put a lot of focus on it, in that, you know, we are stronger in our diversity. And when we have diverse teams, whether at my embassy, your High Commission, your media house here at MUVI TV, you know, when we work together and we have men and women working together, people of different races, ages, backgrounds, we're stronger. Our unity in diversity is one of our strengths as free people. And I really believe women have very important voices and perspectives to contribute that we don't understand sometimes. You know, it's important to bring the different perspectives together. And when you have women and men involved in public life, the whole is greater than the parts.
Nick, do you want to add?
Just to say that in a democracy, a government represents its people, but it is also representative of its people. And women play as prominent a role in public life here as they do anywhere. And it's important that governments represent their people, and that they, therefore, that women are as equally represented in those governments as men are. And I think, I mean, David, you spoke about, you know, the fact that UK's had 2 women prime ministers in its past. We've also had, I'm not sure quite how many men prime ministers, but dozens and dozens. And you know, and we've got a lot to learn and a lot to do in that regard too. So to say again that we should celebrate certainly the fact that there's so many prominent women leaders in Zambian politics today, and that the number of women vice presidents, or potential vice presidents, running mate candidates that we've seen coming, putting forward their nominations is something that we should be celebrating, all of us. Thank you.
Let's go to COVID-19. Now, this week, Zambia recorded first case of the Indian variant that has had a devastating impact on that country, India. A move that has resulted in the tightening of the country's entry points. What has been your government's support towards the fight against COVID-19 in both monetary and technical support to COVID? I know that in your earlier submission you talked about 16 million, but that was not to fight COVID. With this case that was reported this week, how has been your support? How have you been supporting Zambia in terms of monetary and technical support in fighting or combating COVID-19?
Certainly. Well, I mean, both the United States and the United Kingdom have played leading roles in the international response against COVID. And in fact, our foreign ministers were just in London this week, along with others from the most advanced democracies, economic powers, as part of the G7, to look at that and look at what more we could do. I mean, in terms of the UK's role, I mean, you asked for sort of monetary value. I think it's now something like 65 billion kwacha of additional, that's billion kwacha, of additional support to the COVID response in terms of dealing with the health effects of COVID, dealing with the economic fallout from COVID, dealing with the humanitarian aspects that have arisen through COVID. It is a huge global challenge that's affected every country and almost everyone around the world in some way or another. So I'm proud that we, alongside our partners, US and also Zambia, are playing such a crucial role in terms of what that has meant in supporting and working alongside Zambians and government and institutions here. I mean, first of all, the UK has been a major founding contributor to the COVAX facility, which has ensured that, or is aiming to ensure equitable purchase and supply and distribution of vaccines to 92 of the world's poorest countries. And I think that now amounts to, well, it's around £700 million that the UK's put towards that alone. But I think also, and if you've followed the debate recently in terms of manufacturing of vaccines, which countries are now looking to step up, and there's a desperate need for vaccines around the world, and we've seen that most notably in India in recent days, that the UK has ensured that For example, the AstraZeneca vaccine that received significant UK government support, that was developed by scientists in Oxford University and then manufactured and licensed through UK-Swedish firm AstraZeneca, that we've given that, we have licensed that to other manufacturers around the world, including the Serum Institute in India, from where Zambia itself received its first delivery of vaccines a few weeks ago, and both David and I were at the airport alongside the Minister of Health and other officials to welcome those vaccines. I could go on. I'm conscious that there's a lot that we could cover, but just to say, most recently, and you mentioned the Indian variant, and obviously that is a huge concern, both here in Zambia, where the first case has been confirmed, and back in the UK as well, where there's now pockets of Indian variants being recorded in parts of the country. And clearly, it is a more transmissible variant, which is one of the reasons why it is of concern. I would just say that identifying the genomic sequencing is vital in order to understand what virus we're dealing with and what variant we're dealing with, and there are going to be more variants in the future. So I'm pleased that our scientists and our public health officials and the US as well as the UK are working so closely with Zambian scientists, with public health officials here in Lusaka and across the country to work on that genomic sequencing so that we can understand more what it is that Zambia is dealing with, and so that we're more that we're better prepared in order to respond and introduce the public health measures that are needed to try to mitigate the risks and the spread of the disease.
David, same question to you. What kind of support has the US been giving to Zambia in terms of monetary and technical support in fighting or combating COVID-19?
Yeah, since March of last year, when COVID first came here to Zambia, we have provided tens of millions of dollars of assistance in a wide variety of ways for material support to laboratories, for testing, technical assistance. We work very, very closely. I think I've worked extensively with health officials of the government who are wonderful, who are providing great assistance and leadership to the country several times this week, just in conversations. Our technical assistance with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, U.S. Agency for International Development, is deep and broad, and we do a significant amount of work together in that regard. President Biden just announced earlier this week, as some of your viewers may be aware, that the United States will be releasing 80 million doses of AstraZeneca to the global efforts to fight the pandemic. Likely, this will be, as some of the earlier distributions have been through the COVAX facility and others. The details are still being worked out, but 80 million doses are going to be shared around the world. Clearly, the need is greater than the supply. But, in the United States, we've lost almost 600,000 of our citizens. So over 20% of the people who've died in the world have died in the United States from COVID. We have responded with the Biden-Harris administration very dramatically. And I would say to your viewers, one of the things to keep in mind is that the way we've turned the corner is by mask wearing, social distancing, and the crucial thing is when people have opportunities to get the vaccine, take it. I've been vaccinated. Others that I know, good colleagues, have been vaccinated. It will save your life. Getting the vaccine when you have the chance. This is reliable. You get vaccines for the flu. You get vaccines for hepatitis, other things. You need to take the vaccine. And what we need with your viewers and leaders in communities, religious leaders, traditional leaders, the health leaders are out there pushing hard. Support and encourage that as more vaccines come to Zambia, and we're helping make that happen in the months ahead, please take the vaccines. It will save your life. The last comment I would make, Kelvin, on this is that, basically, as the colder season comes on, the third wave is coming to Zambia. No doubt. the third wave of COVID is coming, and the third wave may be worse than even the second wave in January, February, because there's going to be more spread of the South African variant, the Indian variant, and we're just going to have to be aware that with the cold weather, it's likely to spread. So people, when you're not next to each other or when you're not vaccinated, you have to wear your mask over your nose and mouth. Don't wear your mask under your chin like a fashion statement. You got to cover your nose and your mouth. And the thing I would say in this campaign season, thinking about to what we talked about at the beginning, in the campaign season, what's very worrisome is that there'll be big campaign rallies, even despite what the Ministry of Health says. If people get together in big groups and don't wear masks, if they get together in big groups and don't wear masks, COVID will spread. And you know what will tragically happen? People will die. And you know what politicians and party leaders should think about? If people die who come to their campaign rallies, those people can't vote, right? So good health is good politics, you know? And people need to realize that you need to support your citizens, you need to support your constituents, support your voters. Don't let people come to a rally or a gathering or anything. If you're not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask. So those are the things. 5 golden rules: wear a mask, social distance, wash your hands, get help if you're sick, and make sure, I forgot one of my,
Social distance.
The social distance, and those are the 5 golden rules. The most important is to wear your mask. And when you can get the vaccine, get the vaccine. The United States is driving down COVID, and now in the United States in public gatherings, we don't have to wear a mask if you're vaccinated. But that's an extraordinary change that has only happened by this progress we've made. We are working to help India, South Asia, Zambia, other countries across Africa and Latin America to combat this, because this challenge of COVID is an international challenge. And we won't be safe until all of us are safe. It's a shared challenge.
Nick, in your submission earlier on, you talked about the United Kingdom working with civil society organizations. In terms of COVID-19, or in terms of fighting COVID-19, David has mentioned the issue of people coming together, or traditional leaders helping to disseminate messages of telling their subjects that they need to receive the vaccination. Are you happy so far with the traditional leaders, civil society organization leaders, in terms of relaying or encouraging or appealing to their subjects to get this vaccine? Are you happy so far with the response that is coming from the general public after being encouraged by traditional leaders and civil society organizations?
So I think there's been some great examples of where traditional leaders, religious leaders, leaders within communities, David and I had the opportunity today to speak with leading government official who, where they have spoken about the need to do the very things that David said in terms of social distance, mask up, wash your hands, and when there is an opportunity to take the vaccine. And I think clearly there is, that has taken some effect. I think there's a lot more to do. And I think that's why it's so important that all of us, particularly those in a position to influence others, take that opportunity to do that, so that they can encourage people to take those kind of measures, particularly as David said already, as we look to campaign season and the possibility of large crowds gathering, but also as people go about their daily lives, where where it's difficult sometimes to take those kind of measures, that we can still do what we can to try to protect ourselves and protect our loved ones and the communities. So I think we have seen some great examples. I think there's also, you can never say that message enough. So any opportunity we have, and I'm glad that you've given us that opportunity tonight to talk about it and talk about the importance of protecting each other. As David said, this is a terrible disease that has affected everyone, but we will only be safe when everyone is safe, and that's why the UK and the US and other partners have worked so closely with Zambia and with Zambians in order to try to tackle this disease here.
David, back to you. Nick has talked about faith-based organization. He has talked about civil society organization, traditional leaders. Are you satisfied with these traditional leaders or leaders being in the forefront to get the vaccine first? And are you also happy with the response that is coming from ordinary citizens to say, I have seen my leaders, because here in Zambia, I think it was, people are making fun of it, to say, when the dose comes to Zambia, first of all, we want to see our leaders, ministers, the president, getting the jab. And indeed, we saw the president, we saw former ministers leading the group by being the first people to receive the dose. But are you happy with the response that is coming from ordinary citizens in responding and getting the doses?
Well, Kevin, let me first say that I think the efforts
Of senior people in government have been impressive. And I think senior leaders in government to step forward to get the jab, to get the shot, right, spot on. Nick and I went to the event, as we said, when the vaccines were delivered at the airport and when the first shots were administered, and the former Minister Chanda and Kennedy Malama and all those great folks who work in the public health team, got the shots. I think that's a great example. And I know as they went around the country, there were a lot of key traditional leaders and some key religious leaders, people that I know from CCMG and different church mother bodies, I know got the vaccine. That is absolutely critical. So I take inspiration from that. I know I was just talking to senior people at the Ministry of Health earlier today who I deeply respect and deeply appreciate. And they are working hard to get more vaccines here because I know there's interest and people want to get the vaccine. Just the emphasis is the average citizen needs to know this will save your life. It will save your life. It will save the lives of the loved ones close to you because you won't transmit so likely. Like I have a very little chance of transmitting the coronavirus now because I've gotten the vaccine. I've had my 2 shots. And that is a tremendous benefit that we know now, the science shows us that it's so important. To your point, Kelvin, I think health workers, frontline workers especially, when you get the chance, please, please, please get the vaccine. So to your point, there's a lot to be hopeful about, but we still have a long ways to go in terms of building awareness of how important this is. And again, with the 3rd wave coming, people are going to see in the second half of this year that sadly we're going to lose some loved ones. And that's a very sad thing because when we've lost loved ones before and we've lost people in government and civil society, churches, traditional leaders, we've lost some wonderful souls here as we have in other countries. And we have to prevent that by doing what we can. And again, wear a mask. Wear a mask. The most important thing, and when you can get a vaccine, get the vaccine.
Nick, we are in the cold season, and we are told that we are anticipating a 3rd wave. And this is the period where campaigns will be going on. We saw the Minister of Health working hand in hand with the Electoral Commission of Zambia advising political parties not to be holding rallies. Others have argued, other political parties have argued that it would be very difficult to campaign without holding rallies. Do you think with the commitment that we've shown so far as a country and those leaders that are in the political arena, do you see them adhering to the advice that has come from the Electoral Commission of Zambia and the Minister of Health not to be holding rallies but look for other forms of campaigning to would-be voters?
Thank you. I mean, I think it's a really interesting question and a really difficult question in terms of, I sympathise somewhat, I have to say, with people who have to make these kind of decisions, the institutions, because on the one hand, we've spoken about the need, what we need to do to protect each other from this terrible disease, But earlier in the programme, we also spoke about the fundamentals of a democracy, and those fundamentals include the freedom of assembly, the freedom of free speech, and rallies are an important way for all parties to be able to gather their supporters and also have that kind of debate and voices that will allow Zambian voters to decide who it is they want to vote for on the 12th of August. I mean, I have, like David, a huge amount of respect for those decision makers who are having to in the public health officials and others who are having to make these kind of difficult decisions. What I would say is that whatever restrictions may be necessary to ensure the safety of Zambian people as the third wave approaches, it's very important that those restrictions are applied equitably and equally to everyone, so that we don't have a situation where one party or one party leader or one group of supporters are able, on whatever premise, to draw crowds and to set out what it is that they are standing for on the electorate and for the vote on 12th of August, and others do not have that opportunity. So whatever happens, whatever restrictions may be introduced, it is absolutely important that there is an even-handed approach to ensuring that those restrictions apply to everyone. Whatever they may be, that is the most important thing.
David, we have to go, but I won't let you go without you talking about the police in terms of allowing political parties or political players to campaign freely, and also the media in this country. We are in a critical time, as well as people out there in terms of campaigning, having a level playing field for each and every participant in this election to have equal access to the media, also equal access to the people out there, because the issue of the Public Order Act, others are arguing that it has been abused. Where others have gone, others have been stopped because of Public Order Act. Your final appeal.
Yeah, I think Nick puts his finger, as he often does, right where it needs to be, and it's on the equal treatment. Because for COVID regulations of public health, it needs to be the same standard for government rallies, PF rallies, or PF gatherings, as UPND or other parties' opposition gatherings. You can't have one standard for one and one for the other. With Public Order Act, you can't have one standard for government and one standard for opposition. You can't allow media that are government media to have one standard and free, independent media have another standard. It needs to be the same standard. You can't treat cadres of one party one way and other parties the other way. Equal treatment. Democracy is about a level playing field. It's about free and fair. It's about every person has an equal chance. This week, I'd say it again, this week was a very exciting week in Zambia. People came forward. His Excellency Edgar Chagwa Lungu, the President of the Republic, announced his candidacy again to run for president. HH announced his candidacy to run for president. Harry Kalaba, there's others. They all announced their candidacy for president. That's exciting. They came forth with their vice presidential candidates. So let's have a good debate, a free debate, an open debate, and let the people decide. Don't have people intervene and say, you can speak, you can't speak, you can gather, you can't. Don't have different standards. Equal standards. And in the end, the people will benefit, Zambia will benefit, democracy will benefit, and our friendship. As Zambians, as Americans, as British, as free people around the world, we will all benefit. And that's a beautiful thing.
Chargé d'Affaires US to Zambia, David Young, many thanks for making an appearance on the special assignment on MUVI TV. Hope to see you soon, and wishing you all the best as you continue to stay in Zambia as campaigns are getting hotter and hotter. Thanks. Your Excellency Nicholas Woolley, thank you so much for making an appearance on MUVI television, and wishing you all the best with the people of UK as you continue to observe what is happening, what will continue to happen in this country now that we are in an election year.
Thank you very much, Kelvin. I look forward very much to coming back on the program.
Thank you so much. There you have it. This has been the assignment. Special Assignment Thursday's edition it is. On behalf of Mavuto Piri, the producer and director of the program, as well as Ronald Kombe, who has also helped in making sure that the program has been a success. My name is Kelvin Tabula Chifoko, and I've been chatting with David Young, who is a U.S. Chargé Affairs in Zambia, as well as Nicholas Woolley, who is a British High Commission to Zambia. Until next time, it is good night.